So hey guys, in this video we will be doing a review of the Fifine K688 podcast microphone. This is a dynamic microphone with both XLR and USB outputs. We will be comparing it to the Shure SM7B later in this video, but up first, the unboxing. So this is the unboxing of the K688. We have a user manual. And we have all the important stuff covered, how to connect it, how to use the buttons, how to install the drivers for Mac and PC, as well as how to speak into it, along with information on how to record to Audacity. Fifine has had pretty good manuals. So far, this is my second Fifine microphone to review. The previous one is the K658, so very similar to this guy. Here we have the microphone. On the back we have XLR, USB, headphone, and gain headphone volume, and that's the microphone. Inside the box we have USB 2.0 to USB-C, Type A and USB-C. It feels like a pretty long cable, right? So it's quite the length, which is rather nice for a USB-C cable. If it's still not long enough, you might need a extension cord. But it says here we are 8.2 feet. 8.2 feet is quite long. Then we have some accessories. We have a 3.258 adapter. Now comparing the K688 to the previous K658 that I reviewed, you'll notice that we have LEDs in the shock mount, and the shock mount is behind the microphone, while it's a little different on the K688, where the shock mount's closer to the middle and there's no LED lighting. But let's pull it here actually and take a closer look. So we have definitely a difference in kit. The K658 has a little more weight to it, and not by much, but a little bit. Gray versus black foam on the back. That's the biggest difference. The new one, the K688, has the XLR output, which gives it more flexibility. If you have a professional preamp, you can connect it to that over XLR, improving perhaps audio quality. We'll see. Here, the LED lights shine out the back and they reflect off the shock mount, while with the K688, the new one, does not exist. I think that those LEDs probably are what add to the weight and the style button. There's a mute button on both. So the mute button's there. Touch sensitive, they're not buttons. And instead we have the headphone dial and gain volume on the back, where we don't have any gain volume for the microphone on the K658. One interesting difference is K658 unscrews. So that's what it looks like. And with the new K688, it just pulls off, so it's pressure fit. Now comparing it to the classic SM7B, we see that there's quite a resemblance on some level. I've had this Shure SM7B now for quite a few years. But there's the comparison on it. It's a little hard to to make equivalent comparisons. These are different. This is more cost effective, so a lower price. This particular Shure SM7B is really around $400 or $500 Canadian, and probably like 400 US-ish, depending on where you get it, whether it's used, on sale, etc. As you can see, the foam windscreen comes off, but it comes off with the clip. The internals are similar as well, but you can tell that there's definitely a difference. One of the more obvious differences to me, just looking at these two, is how far back the microphone capsule is in the Shure SM7B. It's always all the way back here. And with the K688, the capsule comes right to the front, like right to the front. So that, if you wanted to compare it more speaking distance away from the capsule, it would almost be like that. Right. Now I'm not going to test it that way. I'm going to test it so I'm equal distance away from both microphones. I think that's the fairest way to test it. However, I'm afraid that we're going to have more plosives, more pops and plosives with the K688 as a result of that. Now the Shure SM7B, it comes with this foam windscreen, but it also comes with a second foam windscreen. As you can tell, this one's much thicker. This one's quite a bit lighter. Now, so there's no comparison between what Fifine includes in this separate one that Shure has bundled in their package. It goes on, pressure fits, and it's quite a nice thing. If you have a guest who can't speak all that well into a microphone, this is a very easy sort of foam windscreen to get them started. They're going to have a harder time speaking improperly into one of these microphones, I find. It also might help maybe like with reducing certain sound frequencies if you want to go that way, because you can take it off and use it without a foam windscreen as well, and some singers do that. Now, I was asked previously if this foam windscreen would work on the K658, and it does. Let's see if it works on the K688. And oh my God, it is pretty much perfect. So I'm going to actually have to test this out with this Shure foam. I can see why Fifine went with this non-screwable version and instead went with this kind of press-on, because it's a perfect fit for this larger foam windscreen. I almost wish they included one. But yeah, there we go. That is now pretty gorgeous. And it also increases a little bit more of that distance from the front of the capsule. So this will help, I suspect, quite a bit with plosives. We'll try that out though. And so we'll jump into testing. So I'm capturing audio with the microphone now. I have it connected over the USB cable to my Windows PC. Let's check out the Windows drivers. So by default, it's 48 kilohertz, 16-bit, 2-channel for some reason. And we also have the option to drop it down to 44.1 kilohertz. Now that is a little on the low side for like a professional microphone, but for web conferencing, live streaming, it's perfectly fine. Video Ninja uses 48 kilohertz via the Opus codec, for example, and most browsers and applications are limited to 48 kilohertz also. So unless you're trying to do some post-processing for a podcast or some music, you may not really need that extra sample rate and resolution. If you do, you can always get an XLR preamp, of course. This microphone has XLR output, so you can bypass the USB mode and get that higher quality capture if needed. And we'll take a look at that in a second when we compare this microphone to the Shure SM7B. I did get a note from Fifine on how to use this microphone. I should probably go through that quickly. They mentioned speaking to the front, because this is a dynamic, and slightly off axis at around 10 degrees, and to speak into it from about 2 to 6 inches away, which is roughly what I'm doing here. They also recommend I use a boom arm, and I have that connected as well, so I have this mounted on a boom arm. Now, a dynamic microphone is one of my preferred microphones for live streaming. It tends to reject a lot of background noise. You can get really close to them and not have them usually blow out. So they're just really flexible microphones to get that kind of personal broadcast sound while rejecting a lot of the background noise in the room. They do suffer from, I kind of find, higher noise floors if you aren't speaking into them very closely. If you speak too far away, the preamp is going to really struggle to amplify the signal enough, and it's going to start introducing like white noise. So you really need to speak close to this particular microphone in the USB mode to keep that noise floor at bay. But as you can hear, it works pretty well when you do that. If you want to try to get lower noise floors, you can always go with the XLR road, because then it just comes down to your mic preamp. If you have a good mic preamp, you can get lower noise floors. One of the improvements on the K688 over the K658, which I reviewed previously, is it seems to do a better job at removing plosives. So before, I would have had to have used this Shure thick foam windscreen to help reduce plosives when speaking into the microphone, but not so much anymore. Just to give you an idea of how it sounds with and without the Shure, I'll switch this around. There we go. So now I'm speaking into this microphone with the Shure SM7B's thick, heavy-duty kind of foam windscreen. It comes with two. This is the bigger version that helps, what I think, a little bit more with plosives and things like that. Obviously, the K688 does not come with this, so if you do want this foam windscreen, you're going to have to buy it aftermarket. Still, this is how the microphone sounds like with the Shure thick foam windscreen. I think it sounds pretty great, personally. So yeah, kind of neat. You may not need it, though, if you think it sounds good without it. And just for some fun, this is how the microphone sounds without any foam windscreen on at all. I'm speaking into it again from about 2 inches away from the front, a little bit off axis at the moment. So yeah, that's how it sounds like. I'll put this back on. Overall, I wasn't quite sure what to expect initially, but I'm actually pleasantly surprised by how low the noise floor is on this microphone over the USB mode. It works pretty well, especially if you are speaking close to the front of the microphone, as they recommend. That's not often how I use my dynamics. I sometimes get lazy and sit back and speak from half a foot or a foot away. And in that case, it's going to pick up a little more signal background noise. Okay. Now, some quirks like the mute button. It works most of the time. Works most of the time. I find you have to be very precise, and sometimes you have to even double tap for it to detect your tap. But it's a mute button. Most microphones don't even have a mute button. I'm finding that because it's like a touch sensitive sort of button, it's a little bit hard to tell if you actually you pressed it, and when you do, it doesn't always register, especially if you miss it by a little bit. Still, it works, and it's nice to have, and it doesn't pick up too much noise when you tap it. Now, in terms of noise, we do have this microphone on a boom arm, and it does have a shock mount. So little rubber bands holding the microphone in a floating position. So I'll do some knocking tests on the stand to give you an idea of how it sounds when you shake or knock on the stand. And for some comparison, I'll knock on the microphone. So that's how handling the microphone, how that sounds. Not too bad. I don't think there's anything more we can do with the microphone other than I'll do one sort of test where I'll currently now apply a noise filter in post-processing, just to give you an idea of how this microphone sounds with a post-processed noise filter applied. Because if you do have some background noise or the microphone is a little bit noisy at times, let's say, you can still remove that noise usually with a filter like Isotope RX, or if you're using something like Video Ninja or Zoom, those will have noise filters built in. So the noise isn't really a huge deal these days because of software, and this just demonstrates how this microphone sounds when you apply a noise filter. So yeah, let's jump into doing a review of the Shure SM7 to this guy over XLR. Both microphones are now set up. On the right, I have the Shure SM7B, and on the left, the Fifine K688. They're both flush to each other in terms of distance from my mouth, and I'm just speaking over them a little bit. They're about 4 or 5 inches away from my mouth. I have the SM7B gained to about 90% on the mic preamp, which is around 60 decibels, and the Fifine K688 is 6 decibels lower, meaning that it's a louder microphone. It puts out a stronger signal by about 6 decibels, which is a good thing in my mind. Like if you have a budget mic preamp that doesn't go very loud, a stronger signal is going to give you a louder output. It also means if your mic preamp introduces a lot of noise, by having a stronger signal, you reduce the noise floor. You have a stronger signal to noise ratio. It might not matter as much if you have a very good mic preamp. It won't be introducing a whole lot of noise, but it is something to consider if you have a budget one. So yeah, what I'll do now is I have everything in the room turned off. All the fans, all the computers, they're all off. I'm recording directly into the camera. And this is a treated home studio, so I'll just go quiet for a second, let you hear the noise floor on both these microphones with a little bit of gain boost so you can hear it. And I'll let you decide which one you think is better or worse. Okay. Hopefully that was enough. All I could hear is my tinnitus. So I'm assuming it was pretty quiet in the room. Yeah. The only real difference I see visually is On the back of the Shure SM7B, you have toggle switches to either give yourself a boost to the upper end, like a little bit of a treble boost, and there's also a bass roll off. So if you have sort of a hum in the room, anything below like 100 hertz you can cut out, and that could be useful as like a noise filter. Otherwise, they're both pretty similar. When I was listening to these two microphones earlier, I like the sound of both of them. I do still personally tend towards the SM7B. I find my voice is a little bit nasally on a lot of microphones, so I prefer that warm, muddier tone that the Shure SM7B offers in its neutral switch mode, just because it tends to take out that nasally sound a bit on my voice. Now, a lot of people don't like that muddy, warm tone of the Shure SM7B. They prefer maybe something with a little more clarity, something that's a little more modern, and the Fifine K688 might fit that role. Ultimately, it comes down to your own voice and your own personal preference, of course. Every voice is different, and it's going to work differently depending on the microphone. So there's nearly no best microphone for all voices. It really comes down to what you prefer. So hopefully that gives you an idea, though, of what you can expect. I am thankful to Fifine for sending me this microphone for review. I was not paid or anything to do this, but I really do like broadcast microphones, and they are definitely coming out with microphones kind of targeting what I'm interested in. The Shure SM7B is quite expensive, so if I was just starting out, something like the Fifine K688 would be really exciting, because I could start with USB and then work my way up to XLR, and then at one point or another decide if I really need to go something even better after that. But it's a good starting point. I don't see anything majorly wrong with it. It works quite well, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you for watching, and have a good one, guys. Bye.